This is Sports Talk with Steve Jones, a Seven Mountains Media production, your daily talk show with the voice of Penn State football and men's basketball, featuring interviews with special guests. Now here's your host, Mr. Steve Jones. Steve, how you doing today?
Kyle doing well. The guy last week had no idea how to intro the show. He just pointed and said start.
We love you, Jason. We love you.
Oh, sure, yeah. You speak for all of us.
Mm-hmm. I speak for the trees. I'm the Lorax.
It's great to be here. We have gone through Memorial Day weekend, so the unofficial start of summer kicked into gear. That means by the end of the week, we will have State College Spikes baseball. Joe Putnam is going to join us on the show on Thursday to talk about the opener on Friday night, which will be at 6:30. They will utilize the larger bases. I saw the pizza boxes today.
What are your thoughts?
I like it. Two elements to it. Number one, obviously the distance to get to second base is 4 inches shorter. That makes a difference. You think about all the bang-bang plays that can happen. But what people leave out is that your lead is 4 inches longer because your ability to dive back. The pitch clock is going to be 20 seconds regardless of anybody being on base or bases empty. So there'll be no changes there. There's no disengagement rule. But I'm telling you, Kyle, I'm going to go out and we'll calculate it now. All right? And we'll have some fun with it as the season goes. I think that there is a good chance that at least half the games played here this year will be finished by 9 o'clock.
Was that a prediction?
Yes.
Okay, I'm writing this down, etching it down, so we can go back at a later time and discuss that.
Now, it doesn't mean you can't have nights where, there's 19 hits banged out, or the pitching staff combines for 7 or 8 walks. I mean, that's going to happen. But I think half the games have a chance to finish in under 2.5 hours.
Honestly, not the boldest prediction I've ever heard. I think there's a legitimate chance that happens.
Yeah, and so it's just something where I think that to me is a selling point for fans here, especially early in the season where some kids, not all, but some might be going to school for the next week or so. But yeah, that's what's coming up next. So the SEC is having its meetings this week, and in the SEC meetings, the primary topic of discussion will be 8-game schedule versus 9-game schedule. The 9-game schedule, and everyone knows that has viewed this podcast, that I am in favor of what I refer to as the 3-6-6 model. 3 permanent rivalry games, 6 teams to get to 9, play the same 6 the next year, just flip-flop the home and aways. Then the other 6 you don't play, same story. And in 4 years you play in everybody's stadium once, and everybody comes to your stadium at least once. All right. That's one of the proposals that is in place for the SEC if they were to go to 9 games. Here is the sticking point. There is now a faction that wants to keep it at 8 games, which would be 1 permanent rival and then a rotation of 7 opponents. Notice who's pushing, let's stick with 8. Alabama aside. All the teams that really need that non-conference game to get them to a bowl game.
It's a bit of a trend.
Kentucky is leading the way, by the way, on the 8. I think that with a 12-team playoff at minimum, with maybe the idea of going to 16, the idea of how beneficial 8 conference games are as opposed to 9, because, look, the SEC has had great success with the 8 conference games, and the way they schedule is very clever. I'll get to that in a second. It hasn't been as necessary. With that 9th game, you do bring in the possibility of a better opponent, the possibility of losing. It's a 4-team playoff. All right. So I understand that. The SEC has had, obviously, quality football. They are very clever in how they schedule.
How is that?
In that every week they have a game that is an SEC game that makes you think there are more than 8 conference games. Second week of the season, Florida, Tennessee, big game. Come on, watch on CBS. It'll be great. Blah, 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 blah. Third week, hey, this week it's going to be Auburn taking on LSU. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. You're like, wow, another big SEC game. But they spread them out. And they do it in such a way where it makes you think, wow, they must play 10 conference games. Au contraire, mon frere, they play 8. It's just the way they schedule it is clever.
It's the smarter way to schedule.
And they've been able to make it work. 4 non-conference games. And of course the world famous next to last week of the season. Let's play Citadel. What?
Central Kentucky Tech. Okay. Insert the school here.
My criticism of that has been simple. That there are 6 weeks in the season where the College Football Playoff Committee rates teams. And that's one of the games you're playing in that set? It's one thing if you're playing Vanderbilt. It's a conference game. I'm not going to penalize you for playing Vanderbilt. They're in your conference. What are your choices? This is a game you chose to play when we're rating. And my thought process has always been quite simple. I would send a message. And my message would be, say you're second on November the 11th when it comes out, and you play Furman or the Citadel that week. You're automatically no higher than 5th the next week.
Unless you win by at least 100.
Nope. Even you win by 100. You're no better than 5th the next week. That doesn't mean the next week I don't move you back to 2nd when you play somebody really good.
It's a penalty.
Right? But it's going to be, and I would explain it. You shouldn't be playing Citadel when rating teams.
Yeah.
Right? Sorry. We're out here rating teams, trying to sort. Now, it's all going to be different once you go to 12. There's more of a grace in there for this. But when you're only going with 4 teams, somebody else is out there fighting their guts out. Say Wisconsin's in the thick of this thing, and suddenly they're playing a game with Iowa. Oh, hold on a second here. They're playing Iowa. Okay, you're playing Samford. Not Stanford, Samford. Well, I'm sorry. I'm not going to. Who am I going to give more credit for going out and beating somebody? The winner of the Iowa-Wisconsin game? For your 60-point win over Samford? Or Mercer? One year, I think Alabama played Mercer. Mercer? And I would, you have your opportunity on TV after the selection is always done when you're interviewed by ESPN. How could you drop, let's just pick Alabama, to 5th? They shouldn't be playing Mercer. They say they're disrespecting us by playing Mercer when we're rating teams.
Yeah. When I hear them now saying, oh, we're going to play the Citadel, I think, wow, they're playing against Priyanka Chopra, Jonas, and Richard Madden. Wow, what a game.
All at once.
All at once.
That makes it more impressive.
Mm-hmm.
But that would be, I mean, if you want to play games with your schedule, that's fine. I don't need to play your game. I don't need to play your game. Now you're 5th. That doesn't mean the next week automatically I move you back to 2nd because I'm taking the full body of work and you go out and you beat Auburn. Okay, now you're back to 2nd, depending on what happens with everybody else. Okay? But I drop you to 5th automatically. Sorry, you're out. Well, how could you possibly be out? I'm sorry, you looked at us and said, we can get away with this. Actually, you can't.
Yeah, you can't get away with playing Central Arkansas Pine Bluff every other week.
You can't do it. Right? There's only 6 weeks where they rate. Right? I'm not saying you have to go out. You're playing Vanderbilt. No problem. That's a conference game. That's the way it goes. They're a Power 5 school. You played a Power 5 school. Okay? Playing an FCS school, I'm going to look around and go, what are you doing here? Now, somebody would say, well, does it matter if they play them in September or then? Actually, it does. It makes a big difference to me playing September then. I'm not rating you in September. I'm rating you now. On this particular week, who are the 4 best teams? That's what those ratings are. This week's snapshot is click. Okay? Well, you decide to play Mercer. In this week's snapshot, you're not in the Final Four. But not one time have I seen the committee have the guts to do that, where they send a message and say, I'm sorry, you can't do this.
I think they might start doing it with the expansion. With more teams being able to get in, I think there's going to be a lot more shifting in who is where, especially now that you have more teams getting in. And now there's more reason to play those bigger teams later. Let's say they still play an out-of-conference game, but let's say it's Alabama and they're like, oh, we're going to go play, I don't know, Texas Tech or something, a bigger Power 5 team. Now, if they play that, and let's say they lose, it at least looks better at the end of the day because there are more teams there. I think the bigger reason teams would play Citadel the second to last week of the season is because it's a guaranteed win, and okay, I'm sitting at 12-0 or 10-0, whatever you're at that point. You lose to Ohio State if you're Alabama. All of a sudden, that one loss is big if there's 4 teams there. But if there's 12 or 16, now one loss, 2 losses isn't the worst.
It is not as devastating. So they're debating 8 versus 9. I believe, according to what I've read, that Greg Sankey, the commissioner of the SEC, prefers 9. And that's in part because, look, it's actually easier to schedule because you have 16 schools. And I think I go back to what I've said before. Georgia has never played a game at Kyle Field against Texas A&M. Okay, Texas A&M joined the conference 2 years ago. Texas A&M's been in the conference since 2011. Right? Georgia's never played a game there. That's not a conference. I'm talking, they've never played a football game there. Obviously, they played basketball there at Reed Arena. But they've never played a football game there. Well, that's not a conference. To me, a conference is everybody playing everybody at some point. The Big Ten football scheduling is bizarre to me right now. You play Nebraska at home and, 17, 18, and all of a sudden, in 20, you're out there, and I don't know. I have no idea when they're on next. And the Big Ten still doesn't have a 2024 schedule, at least that they've published. They may have one, but they have not published it yet as to what they're going to do, so we're all waiting on that as to how they want to schedule. And I don't know what solution they have, where they want to go with it. Do you want to go with 2 permanent and rotate 7? Do you want to go 3 permanent, rotate 6? I don't know. And then who are your 2 permanents or your 3 permanents? These are all things that they have to work out. But that is the big question for the SEC is going to be how many games.
And on the SEC Commissioner, Greg Sankey, he did talk, or it was posted on Twitter by our Brett McMurphy, favorite person ever in the world. It gives an opportunity to play second rivalries every year instead of every other year. Those are huge games. We have a very passionate fan base. And the league is at the forefront of college athletics, and it does not stand still. It is not set in stone every year. He did not say he favored 9-game SEC schedule, but made a very compelling case for the 8 to 9 change in 2024.
Right. And you'll have to go along with what they say. In the end, he may have a preference, but the preference may not be the preference of the athletic directors within the conference or the presidents. Are you a Ted Lasso fan?
I'm a big Ted Lasso fan.
So tonight is the night.
Tonight is the night. It is currently being labeled the season finale, but it is widely believed to be the series finale.
My understanding is, I've never seen it once, so I have no idea what really the deal is about this, but my understanding is it's 76 minutes tonight. It's a long episode.
It Ted Lasso from season 1 was about 30 to 36 episodes, one of those generic half-hour long shows,
Right.
and has slowly upped the level. And this year, most episodes have been 50 plus minutes.
Okay.
The last one, I think, was an hour and 10,
Okay.
so 60. So it would not surprise me if this is 76, especially if it is a series finale. And at this point, I mean, you're not a Ted Lasso fan, so you wouldn't have seen it, but they have upped their production quality to be filming in Premier League stadiums. They even got Pep Guardiola, the biggest coach in the world, from Man City to come on last episode, which is crazy. So anything is possible in the Ted Lasso verse.
What would be the best ending of it for you?
The best ending, and what I think is the most likely thing to happen, it's hand in hand, is that Ted is going to leave Richmond at the end of the season after winning the Premier League title, go home to be with his son, and the once disgraced coach Nate will rise back up, join the staff, and become the manager to take over for Ted when he leaves. And Richmond will then go on to become a great club, kind of as like a 5-minute afterthought, as like at the end, it'll be like, this is Richmond a year later. It's all of them. Ted's visiting, maybe with his kid, something like that.
Okay. And this will come out at what, 9 o'clock
This
tonight?
will come out 9 p.m. tonight.
Now, is this on Netflix?
It is Apple TV Plus.
Apple TV Plus. I mean, I've heard of it. So that's, but I did hear today it was the possibility it was the last episode of something that appears to be popular with people.
It is very popular, and it is a big series finale week. Succession just ended a couple days ago. Again, one of the biggest shows of the past decade.
Haven't seen it, but what, Brian Cox is that?
Brian Cox, Jeremy Strong. It's got a crazy cast. They just ended, and it's being put up there with The Sopranos in terms of all-time TV show lists. So it's a big week for series finales, and I know tonight I'm going to be crying at 9 p.m.
Yeah, but 9 p.m. is the start of it. Why would you cry at the beginning?
Knowing them, they'll put some audio in. They always kind of like with the generic Apple TV logo, they always have audio in the background. They're going to do that, and they're going to make us cry off the bat. Start, middle, and end, we're going to cry at some point in each act.
What hooked you on Ted Lasso?
I've been a big soccer fan for years.
I know that.
Yeah. And I had always seen the Ted Lasso skits and commercials that Sudeikis had done for years, from like 2012 or 2013, whatever it was, until the show got announced. And then I believe season 1 came out during the pandemic, and I watched it after the season finale, and then I kind of got into it. And season 2 came out. I loved it. And now we're here. And Apple TV, as I think it's their only big show, or one of their few big shows, is Ted Lasso. And being able to see soccer all the time in a format like this is fun, because I've had a bunch of friends get into soccer because of Ted Lasso now.
Okay.
So there's a lot more people following the sport because of a TV show, which makes me happy.
Good. That's what a TV show's supposed to do.
Yeah. It's just sad the season ended already. So
Apple TV, which has the MLS, which is a 10-year deal. They were in year 1 with 9 to go. They have the Major League Baseball contract. It was the one that financially made up for ESPN dropping at night. I mean, that's essentially why it came to be. And now, obviously, they're the one entity that streams that is not laid off and has no plans to lay off, which I am only mentioning that because it's interesting.
It's interesting, and I think a big part of it, when looking from
they're also
what they've got,
they're also very deliberate with what they do.
They're very deliberate, and a lot of the other streaming services get crazy amounts of properties that are shows that have run for years, like a How I Met Your Mother or a Sopranos or something like that. But I believe everything on Apple TV is Apple TV's own content.
Okay.
Which means you're getting their own content and you're getting these games versus just going there for whatever shows are on, and changes every year or two depending on licensing and stuff.
Okay.
So they're kind of limiting what they have, but they know if you're here for the long haul.
Celtics Heat. This is the fifth time, I believe, a team has battled back from 3-0 only to lose Game 7. There will always be, I think people that have heard me forever know, I am not a proponent in any way, shape, or form of choking. I just don't believe in it.
You leave it swallowing your food?
I believe one team is just better than the other and they win. Okay? I look at the entirety of a game, an entirety of a series. I don't look at a moment. Oh, they missed that free throw at the end. He choked, blah, blah, blah. Okay, look, for 47 minutes or whatever, okay, the other team scored more points. Okay? That's like the way it goes. Like the other night, White tipped it in. It was a great example to all kids as to how to play the game. He threw the ball into Marcus Smart, went to the corner and went, okay, and he sprinted and outworked everybody, got the ball, laid it in. They won the game. Oh, the Celtics got lucky. No, well, number one, he created his own luck. Number two, for 80% of the game, the Celtics were the better team. Okay? So the way it is, but you play 48 minutes, and in the end, or in football, you play 60. To me, everybody during the course of a game makes mistakes. Everybody does. Everybody misses shots. Everybody, makes a bad pass. Sometimes they get away with it. Loose ball, whatever it may be. Right? The Celtics were at home. So what? The Heat were at home for games 4 and 6 and didn't win. Right? You want to know why they didn't win games 4 and 6? That on those nights, the Celtics were the better team. Last night, the Heat were by a wide margin the better team. And it doesn't matter if Jason Tatum hurt his ankle in the first play of the game or not. It's just they're better. And Caleb Martin played great. Right? The guys that you don't expect to step up, like, back in the day, we mentioned Robert Horry, Big Shot Bob, whether it was Houston or the Lakers, right? Not the star of the team. He's not the star. Right? But he would hit big shots when they needed it. Well, in this series, Caleb Martin, Duncan Robinson, Penn State fans are familiar with him, undrafted guys made big shots. Martin made a bundle of them. And guess what? You watched the game last night. Quite simple. Who had the easier shots? Miami did. They ran better offense and they played better defense. They deserved to win the game, whether it was in Miami, Boston, or a parking lot.
I have two stats for you real quick. Do you know what the Boston Celtics home record is these past two postseasons?
I want to say, I'll guess as to how many home games they've played.
I'll tell you the number.
The home record, I'll just guess. I want to say that their home record is either 9-10 or 10-9.
Their home record is 11-12. They've played 23 games. They are 11-12 at home in 2 straight postseasons.
Right.
Not good.
No.
And the second part of it is the Miami Heat. So you said they've shot well. They had 3 games this series where they made 50% of their three-pointers. They won all 3 of those games.
Right.
During the regular season, 82 games. How many of those do you think they had?
Number of games of 50% or better?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say 3.
3. 3 games of 50% from the three-point line.
Right.
And the Celtics, by the way, in this game went 9 for 42.
And I believe the Heat I think they might be 5-5 in the postseason at home.
Something like that.
Yeah.
They're not great.
Well, but who has been? I mean, last night, if you wore green and you were at home, you didn't win. The Dallas Stars got shut out by the Vegas Golden Knights 6-0. So Vegas and Florida are going to play. So Miami is going to be the center of the sports universe for the next 2 weeks.
Oh, definitely worst place to be for sports.
Exactly. Whether it's in Sunrise or downtown, right on the water there, with the Heat playing Denver, and of course the Panthers playing Vegas. Does it capture America's imagination? That's going to be the key. The diehard is always going to be there. The diehard will always be there. That's why what fan is short for, as we all know, fanatic. That's fine. They're going to be immersed in it. The difference of a good rating and a potentially great rating is the casual fan. Can you capture the imagination of the casual fan? And for the NHL, which will be on TNT this year, and for the NBA Finals, which will be on ABC, I don't know if this captures the imagination of the casual fan. The Denver-Miami series is going to really test the theory that I've had for decades. And the theory I've had for decades, because this is really the first time I feel it's come to fruition, is would the NBA get a great rating if it were Utah against Atlanta in the finals, as opposed to, well, Cleveland against Golden State. Wait, that's LeBron. Yeah. Right? Toronto played Golden State. Well, that was still Steph Curry and Kevin Durant. Okay. Miami playing whomever. That's LeBron. Right? Before that was Shaq and Kobe. Before that, it was a lot of Jordan. Right? They've had like the star of stars involved in their final, which was always a draw, whether you wanted to see the star win or those who wanted to see the star, quote, fail. Okay? Because there's going to be a segment out there. Hey, Tiger, I hope the flop shot goes into the bunker. Right? You're going to have that as along with the, we love you, Tiger, you're the greatest. I'll do a sidestep. Did I ever tell you the Tiger Woods U.S. Open story?
You have not.
Okay. Those who have watched before, I think you're going to, or have listened to the show over the years, you've heard this story. I'm covering the 2013 U.S. Open at Merion. It's a Saturday round. Tiger Woods is paired with Rory McIlroy and I think Bernard Fernandez. So that's the threesome. I'm walking off Golf House Road and Tiger tees off. Bang. Rory tees off. Fernandez tees off. Okay, now they come up to hit their second shots. Tiger actually, I think he used an iron off the tee. He's short, so he hits first. Plops it on the green about 25 feet away. McIlroy hits second. Knocks it on the green about 15 to 20 away. Fernandez knocks it in tight, like maybe 8-9 feet away. So I'm watching the shots because I was getting ready to head out. I had already had the interviews I wanted out, I was ready to head out. And suddenly the crowd starts to swell. Tiger, we love you. You're the greatest. Tiger. And it just dies down a little bit. And I was like, Rory, I love you, Rory. You're the greatest. Right. And then it dies down. And the guy standing right next to me yells out, way to go, other guy. Oof. And by the way, on that day, other guy, Fernandez, had the best score of the three. I think he shot like 71, 72.
The other guys win, man. Right. The other guys win.
So, way to go, other guy. I thought to myself, that is the state of sports. When I talk about engaging the casual fan, that's engaging the casual fan. They all want Tiger. They all want Rory. Neither one in contention. That was the one where Justin Rose beat out Phil Mickelson for the title. But
I have a question for you.
Sure.
A little bit. On that, the Miami Heat team, of course, they just beat the Celtics.
Yeah. They're good.
One big part of the fallout of this series is going to be what happens to Boston, because they're now in this weird spot of Jaylen Brown is max contract extension eligible. He just got all NBA. So that number is a cool, 50, 60 million, pretty high number. I think it's 60 for him to re-sign. Would you give him the max? Would you give him 4 for 240?
Yes. And the reason I would do it is this. I think that, number one, you've drafted well. Marcus Smart's a first-round pick. Robert Williams is a first-round pick. Jason Tatum's a first-round pick. Jaylen Brown's a first-round pick. That is the core of what you're trying to do there. I would give this group one more run at it, right? And I thought adding Brogdon to the mix was the right move for them. I would give this group one more run at it, even though it got to the finals last year. Now they're one step short of that.
Well, you only have one more year you can run at it anyway, because this is the final year, like this coming season, they have it. And then if Brown does sign that max, it sets in the next season. And then Tatum's would start the season afterwards. And with the new CBA, it's you can't physically go any higher than they would be at. They'd be 120 for 2 players. I mean, you're sitting with nothing left.
Right. And that's, I would give it one more run. one more run. If it's not, I'm looking around saying, hey, we got to make some moves here. And then go from there. And so that's how I would look at it. Brad Stevens obviously would have a capologist, whomever that happens to be, to say, hey, this is how it's going to work, why it's going to work, why it's not going to work. I would give them one more run at it. Are they missing something? Yeah, sure, they're missing something.
They're missing, I don't even know what. Like, the problem is the ball at the end of the game is going to be in the hands of your best players, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown.
Yeah, but it's leading up to that. When the Celtics lock in and decide they want to play good defense, like they did against Miami in games 4, 5, and 6. They played well defensively.
For 42 minutes.
Right. And then last night did not play well defensively at all. I mean, there was a stretch where they did play well enough defensively, but they couldn't hit any shots. And the other part is they're not a smart team.
No, and that's, I mean.
And I said this last year when they got to the finals. Look at all the lackadaisical turnovers the Celtics make. You've got to be sharp and crisp. You're in the NBA. See that person over there? Quick with length.
Jaylen Brown had 8 turnovers on his own. 8 turnovers, 5 assists. He averages, in his career, he has the exact same number of turnovers as he does assists. And that's the issue, is he's not a good playmaker. Tatum is an okay playmaker when he wants to be, but when you get into the last 6 minutes of the game, they saw this last year again against Miami. Yeah. They just, for the last however many years, the last 5-6 minutes of any game, Boston goes into prevent offense, and they don't want to score. And they just say, okay, we're going to hold the ball.
Well,
but
they run the clock. That's all. They run the clock, and they end up with a bad shot out of it. Instead of look, just go for it. Okay, get to the lead, play with the lead. And they tried to do that at Miami in Game 6, and they played with the lead until the end. And again, when you start playing to not lose, you then open the door to losing.
And especially when you're playing a guy named Jimmy Butler, who, Jimmy had a really bad games 4, 5, and 6, but all of a sudden, the last 5 minutes of the game or 2 minutes of the game, whatever it was, him and Bam Adebayo put up like 16 points, even though they combined before that had maybe 10.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, Miami has the lead, and you get saved by a really great play by Derek White, who was the only player, I think, in this entire series who played well for Boston.
Yeah, and that was a good acquisition by Bradman. I think, what did they get him from, San Antonio?
San Antonio for like a second or a first, maybe. Not a lot. They didn't pay a lot for him.
Right. But would I give it one more? Yeah, I'd give it one more to see.
But what do you do? Like, you don't have the space to add anything, really. I mean, you'd have to get rid of someone on your group. And I think, Grant Williams is a restricted free agent. He barely played at all, it feels like.
Well,
he's the one.
I will say this. I'm not enamored with Joe Mazzulla. And with all due respect, I felt like in this series, a skilled, steady hand of Eric Spoelstra as to how they played, how they adjusted, what they did, showed up so much in this series.
So do you give Mazzulla one more year? Do you say with this group and the coach, you've got this 23-24 season, and then after that?
I would take a long, hard look at Monty Williams.
He's there. He's up for it.
I would take a long, hard look at Monty Williams.
Do you think Monty would take it, though? With this being, it would probably end up basically being a 1-year deal is what he'd be coming in on, because after that 1 year, the contracts kick in. All of a sudden, you're hamstrung. He'd be in the same spot he was with Phoenix.
Yeah, you're crushed.
You're crushed, and you can get a big money deal. He's one of the best coaches in the NBA.
Right? I mean, that'd be one. Budenholzer is still available, right?
He is still available.
Right. And that's one of those two guys. I think the Sixers made a good hire in Nick Nurse.
Oh, great hire.
I think that's a really good hire for the Sixers and Nick Nurse. Like that a lot. I think he's a pro's pro out there, knows what he's doing. And somebody's calling me from Pittston, Pennsylvania, the home of Jimmy Cephalo. So don't know what they want, but that's all right. Leave a message.
Hear me out. Doc Rivers.
Not his fault. I mean, going back to Boston?
Going back to Boston. Do you think if, let's say Missoula does get ousted and they feel he might stay on the staff, possibly, because he was a great assistant coach. Him, Will Hardy, great assistants under Ime Udoka. And then Will Hardy left immediately for Utah, and then they got stuck with Missoula as the only one left. And they lost someone else, I believe, as well. And would you take Doc as your coach, bring him back? Maybe even Doc on a 1-year deal. Maybe Doc would do that. What do you feel?
Well, first of all, I don't think what happened in Philadelphia was Doc's fault. I just felt he was the scapegoat to show all the Sixer fans, hey, look, we're doing something. Like, okay. You don't happen to think that maybe a couple of guys you have playing for you are very good, like Tobias Harris, James Harden? I mean, Harden can't defend you.
No, he can't.
I wouldn't say he couldn't defend me because he could. You at least have skills.
That's being a lot more confident in me than I am, but continue.
But I mean, but he was scapegoated, essentially. There are no complete teams in this league. Denver has an outstanding record. They have a terrific all-around player and a big man in Jokic. Murray is a terrific player. I thought Calvin did a great job at picking up Brown in the trade. And I thought that, and then Porter, Michael Porter Jr., very, very good. But they have holes. They have holes. Right? Miami's got holes. I mean, these are the two teams remaining. And the Lakers may have LeBron and Anthony Davis. And a couple other guys stepped up and played well, but they have holes. That's why they're not they're not in the finals. Everybody in this league has holes. Milwaukee goes through and has a great regular season. They get to the playoffs, Miami beats them. They have holes. Antetokounmpo goes out, he gets banged up, not quite 100%. Tatum's not quite 100%. Embiid had a torn, is it LCL?
Torn LCL.
Which is an injury that would keep you out 6 weeks. He came back in 13 days. So everybody's been out there trying to gut it out, despite the fact that they're baby during most of the year. He's sitting out tonight, load management. Okay, well, do I get a discount on my ticket? I mean, I paid to see him. He's not playing? This $50 ticket here, can I get it for $30? No, I'm sorry. Really?
If Boston had at least made this game interesting, I don't think we'd be having this discussion. But the fact that they lost by 19 after just being hammered, and yeah, I've seen some fans say, oh, it's because Jason Tatum got hurt. We would have won the game either way. What'd you have? You got beat by 19 at home. Jimmy Butler didn't have a particularly good game either.
He didn't.
The only one who played well was Caleb Martin. Bam Adebayo has done nothing but nothing the entire series.
He didn't done much. No.
I mean, the outside of Jimmy and Caleb, no one had more than 12. I mean, they didn't do too much.
I mean, you're trying to make a comeback in the game. Celtics had a chance to get it to 5. I want to say it was in the third quarter. Right? And they called White for traveling because he stopped and he shuffled his feet and then put the ball up. Right? But you felt like the entire time the Celtics were playing uphill and they were pressing. You know, Miami ran better offense, better scheme. They had open shots. You know, Martin hit his shots. Robinson hit shots. Now, Strus didn't. I have nightmares about these guys.
I do as well.
Robinson and Strus both, they put up some numbers against Penn State. Like, for God's sakes. I
think Shaq last night is the one who talked about it, or him or Charles Barkley, one of the two. That, I mean, they went 9 for 42, Boston, from 3.
Yeah.
At some point, if you missed those first 12 3-pointers, what they said is you tell your guys, drive, get to the basket. Easy shots. Just make easy shots.
Yeah, watch the ball go in the basket.
That was the exact same error the Houston Rockets had when they went 0 for 27 or whatever it was, 27 straight misses. At some point, you got to drive to the basket and get just a layup. The only one doing that was Derek White. That's why he was the only player who did anything. Right. And he went 5 for 12.
Right. Yeah. And that goes back to what messages are you giving in the huddle? Right? And they also didn't have. They forced an average of 13 to 16 turnovers in the 3 games they won. I think Miami only turned it over 5 times last night.
They turned it over 12 times last night. Bam
12?
had 4 of the turnovers. Duncan had 3.
I think some of those were late.
Yeah, some of those might be shifty at best turnovers. They're turnovers with asterisk around them. Air quotes.
Like there's 4 minutes left. We turned it over 4 times. Hey,
yeah,
okay, yeah. So what?
Dribbled off my foot. Turnover.
But then you see like Jaylen Brown, one of his 8 turnovers. He drives left, got loose with the ball, boom, got picked off, goes all the way to the other end, scores.
One of the first baskets of the game was Hayden Highsmith stealing it off of, I forget who it was, just tapping it away and running away. Like 3 of those.
Again, that was the tip-off that the Celtics were going to be the loose with the basketball team that plagues them when they think they have it made.
That's why they lost last year to the Golden State Warriors. They just can't hold the ball.
Right? Thought they had it made. Hey, here you go. Like instead, boom. Like, come on, snap that pass off. Get it over there. This is the NBA Game 7. Your precision has to be not good. It has to be great. So Miami, which has knocked off the number 1, knocked off the number 2, there they are sitting in the finals. Right? They got a coach that's been there before. Malone on the other side, first time through with Denver. First time they've been in a final as a franchise since the 76 ABA final with the Nets. So they've never been in an NBA final before. So they'll be juiced up. The question is going to be is how does Miami handle the altitude? Because remember, some people say that Denver, in part, was built up a great home court record because some teams will hold people out to not play in the altitude. Well, you're going to have to not only play a game in altitude, you have to play 2 games back-to-back in the altitude. So how's your depth going to be?
And they're healthy. They got their series done real quick.
Oh.
And they have been sitting.
But they're used to playing in it. Mm-hmm. It's no big deal to them. Miami has to play in it, once a year? One time?
One time.
Guess what? It is a factor if you're not used to it.
I wouldn't even think about that as the biggest factor. I would think about how do you defend everyone else not named Nikola Jokic, because you can't defend him. No one can. Bam has been terrible against him, and Bam's been one of the best defensive players in the NBA for the past few years.
Well, they're going to have to put the clamps on Murray. Murray, to me, is the key to the entire series because he's been, to me, the key to the entire season for Denver. Jokic was Jokic last year. How far did they go without Murray? Because Murray didn't play last year. Murray had a torn ACL, couldn't play. Where's Denver now? Who played all year? Murray. Yeah. Oh, it helps to have Porter. It helps to have Brown. I mean, they've got guys that help out. There's no question. And Jokic is the centerpiece of what they do. But Jokic becomes exponentially more effective because, 27 is shooting the ball. He's just a good player. Good shooter offensively, the whole deal. And that makes a big difference. Denver is an okay defensive team.
They were, I believe, 15th in the NBA or something.
Okay.
They're the lowest. Them and the Cavaliers team that I believe in 2018 are the 2 lowest ranked offensive or defensive teams in the NBA Finals in the past 2 decades or something like that.
Well, it couldn't have been. They had LeBron. They couldn't have been that low defense.
Whatever team, the Dellavedova team, that one.
I mean, they had LeBron. They couldn't have been that low. I mean, because he can cover all 5 guys. We've been told that.
How would you defend Jokic? Who would you put on Jokic? Because let's say you go with the same starting lineup you've used all series, which is Jimmy Butler, Caleb Martin, Bam Adebayo, Gabe Vincent, Max Strus. Would you rather put Bam on him or have Bam sit back and kind of just rove around and wait for someone to drive?
Oh, I would centerpiece Bam and then zone him. I'd zone him.
They played zone last night. It worked pretty well.
And in that zone, just get right up in his grill. He wants to put it on the deck. Let him put it on the deck. I've got the cleanup guy back there, right? And I mean, I would start that way and see how it goes instead of assigning a guy to him. I want to make sure that I am pressing out on their shooters. I need to press out on Porter Jr. I need to press out on Murray. Right? But do that with zone concepts. Yeah, that's how it started.
Maybe a 3-2 zone concept, something similar to that. Let Bam push up, have someone rove around behind him. Can do a lot.
And it could be a way to keep Bam out of foul trouble too.
Because if he gets in foul trouble, I don't believe Cody Zeller or Omer Yurtseven are going to do too hot for them.
You have more confidence in Cody Zeller than I do.
I also have confidence in 75-year-old Kevin Love to do a lot.
Oh, brutal.
He didn't play. They got him. He was the big piece, and he just didn't play. And you know who else might play later in the series? Tyler Hero.
Yeah, Tyler Hero.
Which would be really interesting if they brought him back.
All right. Well, he can shoot.
He can shoot, but they didn't need him.
So far, they haven't.
Duncan Robinson's been balling. Max Strus, Gabe Vincent.
Well, it's interesting because people they see Duncan Robinson shooting the ball in this series. He had fallen out of the rotation.
Mm-hmm. Because you can't play him and Hero. They're two negatives defensively. Oh. I think being negative is nice to Duncan Robinson and Tyler Hero. I think that is a nice thing to say.
Oh.
I think bottomless hole is a better answer, but
yeah, I think that's what they used to refer to Kevin McHale as. He's the black hole. The ball goes in, the ball never comes back out. Right? Kevin McHale's like, oh, come on. That's not true. Yeah, that great up and under move.
Mm-hmm.
Good player. Yeah, we'll see what it does ratings wise. Like I said, it's Denver, Miami. There's not.
You've at least got Miami, which is at least something.
Maybe, but no offense, but Jokic is a great player, but not a draw.
He's Jimmy
Butler is a great player, but not a draw.
Your only draw is Miami. That's about it.
If the Celtics and Lakers had won, it would have been the Celtics, the Lakers for the 5,000th time.
Jokic is just a quiet player. He's not an MVP who's loud. He's not an Embiid. He's a quiet dude who just goes about and puts up 30, 10, and 10 every game without fail.
Yeah.
Murray's a star, but he's not, I would even say, as loud as like a Donovan Mitchell.
I mean, you see LeBron drive to the basket. You're like, ooh, that is power personified. You watch Jokic drive to the basket, right? You're doing the play-by-play. Right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot. That's a little slower.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know. And the same thing with the Stanley Cup. Stanley Cup, you've got Vegas and you got the Florida Panthers. Oh, boy. So no original six. Okay? No original six. I mean, the Blackhawks didn't even qualify, neither did the Canadiens. So, and the Wings didn't either. Mm-mm. So you only had Toronto, the Rangers, and the Bruins, and the Bruins had this record beyond record and then set all sorts of records and got knocked out in the first round by Florida. Plus, Florida is such a great defensive team. It's boring.
Yeah.
They're such a great defensive team that
defense is boring, but it wins championships.
Right.
No.
And that's not their job to sell tickets.
By the way, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I believe Boston was the first city to lose 2 Game 7s as the higher seed in the same period of time for 2 different sports teams. That they lost both the Bruins and Celtics Game 7s at home as higher seeds.
Great. We're back to the 80s where the Red Sox lost all the time in the big game.
May I ask you about the comparisons people were making between this Celtics team and the 04 Red Sox team? Personally, as a Yankees fan, I thought those were the most outlandish comparisons because the Celtics are going against, or the Red Sox against their rivals in the Yankees, the biggest spending team, the team who beat them the year prior. There was a lot more there. But the Celtics were the number 2 seed, the higher seeded team, the team that should have cruised through this playoffs they got to avoid 2 of the best teams. They got to avoid completely 2 teams. Like how?
Who, the Celtics?
Yeah.
Well, they beat Philadelphia.
They beat Philadelphia, but they got to avoid Milwaukee, which is a big one.
Because Miami took care of them.
Miami took care of them. And then they got to avoid.
There's no comparison between the two in that the Red Sox had taken the Yankees to Game 7 the year before. They had gone through the season. They make it as a wild card. So the Red Sox in 2004 are not the American League East champion. The Yankees are. Covering first base, Schilling got hurt. So Schilling pitches Game 1 injured, and they crush him. Game 2 and Game 3, they get crushed, but something happened in Game 3 that's one of the more underrated elements of Game 3 out of the entire series. Tim Wakefield went to Terry Francona when they were getting crushed and said, just give me the ball. I'm going to pitch the rest of the game. I'm going to just throw knuckleballs. I'll pitch the rest of the game, and did. And it saved the entire bullpen. So that when they went out in Game 4, they win it. Okay? Now they come back in Game 5, and people forget Game 5 went, right? You know, just like Game 4 went deep into the night. You needed your bullpen. And they got 10 shutout innings from their bullpen in the 2 days because that bullpen was rested from what Wakefield did in Game 3 when they got bombed 19-8. You're talking about a team that had David Ortiz, Manny Ramirez, Curt Schilling, Pedro Martinez. I mean, look, they had players. They had Johnny Damon. They had players, right? And, and then they got some momentum. Then Schilling finally comes back, and they did the medical procedure on him to basically cover that ankle injury. And he got through the thing, and they won it. And they only gave up 2 runs or something like that.
They gave up 2 runs. They won 4-2 in Game 6.
They got to Game 7. It is the first time I've ever seen the Red Sox play a meaningful game against the Yankees where I knew they were going to win.
10-3.
Right, but I knew they were going to win. I was like, okay, they're going to win the game. It's fine. Going into last night's game, didn't think the Celtics would win.
And again, the Celtics were the higher seeded team.
Right,
they were a higher seeded team at home,
but they were the higher seeded team based on November, December, and January. The Celtics team from February 1st to now played like they did in the series.
But even so, just again, as you said, the Red Sox were the wild card. Mm-hmm. They were the team they had a great roster, but they weren't as lauded as the Yankees were, I guess we could say. If the Heat had done this to the Celtics, if it was flipped, the Heat had won, that would have been at least something. But this was a better team with more talent.
But a team that after February 1st, this is how they played.
But if you were taking one of these teams just on talent, on everything.
Oh, sure. You take
Butler versus Brown and Tatum. I'd take Brown and Tatum.
Boston's supposed to win.
Yeah, they should have won. They were 97% on ESPN's BPI.
Yeah.
Even I think after Game 3, they were 72% still to win the series. It almost came true.
I mean, first of all,
the BPI is having a nightmare.
But I could care less. That stuff will come by, and I'll look at it and go, really?
Toss it out behind you.
How about let's play, see how it goes?
One of these teams has Jimmy Butler.
Because it's all about matchups to me. It's always about matchups. I don't care what sport it happens to be. How's my number 1 line match up with your 1 line? How's my 3 line match up with your 3 line? Okay, oh, by the way, how does my starting lineup, or when I go to a bench, what matchups am I creating on the floor where I can get an advantage, right? You talked about Duncan Robinson. So you're sitting in a film room, and like you get to the point like, okay, where's Waldo? Right? Well,
Waldo
guess what?
There.
Every time you sit there and you're guarded by Waldo, you are attacking your brains out, getting what you can out of it and taking advantage of it because that's what the video says. I don't care what the what the BPI says. All right, football, it's all about matchups. A great story. Joe Paterno were doing the talk show in the conference room, and on the conference room there were plays up on the whiteboard. We were in a commercial break. I was just glancing up at it, and Joe gets up. He says, "Steve, let me tell you something. You want to know the key to this play?" He takes the black permanent marker, and he goes up there. He says, "I want to know the name that's attached to that X, and I want to know the name that's attached to that O. That will tell me the success of the play." It's about matchups and personnel, not about BPIs. Okay? It's just not. That's why you'll see managers in baseball. They're trying to get a matchup on the mound against the hitter that can give them the best chance because they're trying to create a matchup. All right? And, or why will you pinch hit and send this guy to the plate? Because you're trying to create a matchup. And that's what, the key to sports is all about matchups. Who can I match up that makes me better and gives me an advantage? Or how do I mask my disadvantage and cover it up? How do I cover up problems? Right? How do I protect somebody that is my best option, but is still a problem for me? How do I cover it up? That's coaching.
It is.
I mean, that's a big part of it. Oh, you're in good shape. The BPI says you're going to win. Oh, good. Oh, good. We're not even going to bother showing up. We're good. BPI says we're in. What do you mean we have to play? Oh, darn.
Game 1, by the way, Thursday. And, of course, we're going to preview that. And then on Friday, we'll preview the NHL Stanley Cup.
All right. Get your prediction on the series. And Joe will be with us on Thursday to start the show, and then we'll do the NBA preview.
Just that much better. Joe Putnam and NBA.
All in the same show.
All in the same show. And what show is that? It is, of course, Sports Talk with Steve Jones. Where thank you for tuning into Sports Talk with Steve Jones, Seven Mountains Media production. Check back daily for all the latest sports news and analysis with the voice